The idea behind Heaper is quite simple. You just dump all your information into it, that's files, media, notes, documents, anything from all of your devices, and do the sorting later. Or you don't, because actually the whole system revolves around browsing your stuff even in an unsorted way. Even just grouping 50 items into some tag is enough for you to add other layers on top, and unlike with folders, these tags actually are useful later on because you can do tag intersections and really cool filters. But we'll get into that later. First, I gotta say thanks for all the amazing feedback I've gotten since the launch about 2 months ago. And I've been working on this for quite some time, about 18 years now, and I'm really happy to see that people are actually interested in it. Because the way I organize my stuff is really different from what I see other apps using. I will do a full install video to get you set up and running after this one, and also I'll do more in-depth guides on how to actually configure your filters and what you can actually build with this, because there's a lot of things I actually put a lot of thought into, and I'd be happy to see you actually enjoy the app. Before we get into anything specific, let's get the general parts of the UI in check. First, we have the sidebars on the left and right. That will resize the content to fit accordingly. And the right sidebar is basically everything you need to manage your selection. That's what multiple things then show up as a selection, and you can see which tags are applied here. You can add more mentions and tags or pin them to the sidebar, or adjust the styling, for example, on one of these elements, and go into settings for about the font and everything. This works the same if you have nothing selected for the current page. We'll get more in depth on how the sheet in the middle here works. And on the left sidebar, you have your switcher for the multiple heaps that you can manage and your pinned elements. Below that is the trash to restore anything. Obviously, that's the search, and this button right here on the left is the heap. That brings you back to your main page for your workspace, which in Heaper are called heaps. And this is actually the script and everything that I prepared for this video. There's a lot of things I actually do in Heaper all the time, and we can first dive in a few things. For example, let's go with inspiration stuff. You already saw quite a few of these things in my last introduction video, but I wasn't really showing much of how I actually use this in Heaper. Some things are more curated, some are not. It really depends on where my attention goes. To see what I mean with this, let's dive into my retrofuturism inspiration stuff, because there's quite a few things that I actually just want to look around for and have as like my inspiration boards for how I like some aesthetics, maybe design a room or something, rebuild mine, whatever. The whole thing though is it should be easy to actually browse through these just by using tags. To browse these, it's kind of simple. You can basically just scroll through these lists, and Heaper should make it easy so you can select a few things and tag them with something, which is just dragging them onto something you already have used or in your sidebar items. This is something where I did quite a few of these smaller things that I like to actually confirm that my selection is correct. But if you actually want to dive in deeper, there's this quick preview mode where you can go through your selection, and in total, that's where my picture might be a bit in the way. Well, so I can toggle the selection mode on here and go through the film strip view down below, or go into the grid view to go into one of those pictures, because it's all about browsability. I kind of want to be able to browse around, see some details, and then tag the elements that I'm interested in. This all has, of course, full keyboard navigation support, so you can use that on your PC or on an iPad or something with more ease. And then hotkeys for basically everything. And then we can add tags to these either by using the buttons on the sidebar or just using this drag menu I already showed into the pinned elements. And you can also remove them from things they already have. You can then leave the selection mode with the button up here, and we can customize a lot of these things, like how far are we zoomed in? Do we actually, let's get in a bit closer, do we actually need the details or the title on there? Do we want that below the element or not at all? Does the image need to be contained in there or not? Do we want the masonry grid layout, which is more like a Pinterest kind of layout? But we also have the wide layout, which is basically the same way, just horizontally, where wide images benefit from the space. It really depends on how you want to browse your heap in the end, but that's something where I really enjoy being able to customize it to look like a file manager, for example, and then let me just edit these, go into some additional notes, and then I'm able to add context to the actual image files we have, which makes it possible for me to find things through the normal search interfaces, just because they're actually attached to the same thing. So then if we go into the resources, inspiration, and let's go into the retrofuturism again, you might see that there is this sheet you can pull down. And that's because not only is each block file and node at the same time, they're also kind of like a folder, because all the linked note taking that we can do with this allows us to have rich text content on all of these, which means we can add fancy cover images and our description pieces for each of these to act as a map of content or index pages, which I actually really like because it helps me make clear what the idea of this tag should be. In here, you can do all the normal things an editor would do, from formatting them to having markdown support for things like headlines. Of course, we have some fancy things that Markdown doesn't fully support. So if we just have a text in here, we can also have that highlighted in any color we would like or in a background color. That's up for you to decide. There's a lot more options in here. We also have the full mode to support multi-people editing, so that I am able to have my selection and the cursor and all the things that I'm writing, if I'm on an iPad, for example, on here too, so I can write from an iPad, which is really nice because now you can actually work with multiple devices on the same nodes without needing to sync or any fancy handoffs between them. They just work like this, and they also work if they're offline. This is all done with CRDTs, so they can merge conflict-free, and it's really cool. I can recommend this stuff for any developers out there. If you, though, like me, sometimes would like to not see what other devices are doing, you can just turn them off here. So now that we see that these nodes are actually full-on folders in itself, I gotta tell you a bit about these app views, how I call them. The first one, and you can reorder them in here, is the same one that actually defines the order in the sidebar. This means all the filters you can apply to this app will apply to the sidebar too, which is a really nice thing, so you can filter out things that you do not want and customize your sidebar experience from these in the same way as the normal filters work. That means, though, that we usually have something like this where I have a media view for the retrofuturism, and I can have a separate view with different modes. For example, I can show these in a list type, and if I go to the project settings, for example, I see I have filters set for this one, which basically mean everything that's archived doesn't show up on here anymore. They're still there, and I can add a new app that basically does not have that filter, and I see, oh, there's like a macropath thing I already finished. But getting back to the resources here, the cool thing is, with these views, you can not only do different kinds of displays like in lists views, you can have actual different kind of interactions with it. For example, if I add a proper task list app where I can check these off, and all of them still work just with the tags. So instead of this checkbox applying like a done property or something weird like that, it just applies the done tag. This makes it really easy to find things all mapped to this tag in the end. And there's different kinds of things for different to-do lists. You can customize which tags they set. This basically allows you to build your own apps in this whole system. That's why I call them app views, because you really do different things with them than you would in standardized to-do software, because you can reuse them for different pieces, even in the same workflow. One thing that I do, for example, is I have my Kanban boards in here for all the tasks that I work on Heaper with. This is a new heap that's, I think, 6 to 8 months old, and I could show you a bit on how this whole thing looks right now. I have one view for my heap, which is all the things that are not sorted away. Basically, this just means there's this unlinked filter, which says, just give me the things that are on this workspace that don't have any tags yet. Then I have the one for everything, which filters nothing, and I just get all of the elements in the heap. And I have one for my graph, which basically just shows me all of these in the fancy Obsidian-like graph view things, just that this graph view needs to be performant to up to like 100,000 elements. And I think it does support more, but it's tough to find enough test data to work with this, because you gather a lot of files and you want to visualize them and how everything works together. I'll slowly migrate everything into this one heap at some point. Another thing that I usually use is I have a phone uploads folder, which basically has different filter sets where I say, give me everything that's uploaded from my phone and doesn't have any other tags yet. So it's basically like the inbox of phone pictures that got uploaded into Heaper. There's this search entire heap thing with that the filters do not only apply to everything that's applied to the current block we're on, but you can choose any of them. Like you can find another block that you use as a required tag. To make this one step further, I also added something which basically moves around this whole nested tagging approach you are usually used in things like Obsidian, where you write them with slashes to be descendants of other tags. In here, you already have these hierarchies of tags, and they inherit things from their parents, basically. And with that, I can also say, for this view, the all media view in the inspiration folder, I want not the folders at the top, I want all the elements, which basically acts like things would if you would be using Adobe Bridge or Lightroom, for example. With this in place, I then can just see here, there's the, okay, I want this as tags or mentions, and I want exact matches or all of the descendant ones too. With this, I now have a view where I can browse through all of my inspiration media in one view, which is really interesting because that's not something you can easily do in a file explorer. That quickly gets really complicated. And here it's just one of the filters you're free to use whenever you want. And it's kind of fast. I did my best to do a lot of optimizations for all of these. The preview images are on purpose to be really rich content. So for Heaper, I, for example, have this node where I have like some of the main things I'm currently working on, and even pinned elements are just also tagged with the current workspace, which is kind of nice to work with. If you then want to figure out how to create things, it's basically just pressing this plus button. Whatever you're on right now gets automatically mentioned. You can toggle it to a tag if it actually should inherit properties from this one or be inside that hierarchy, or remove it completely if you want to do something from scratch. Just writing here and you add it to your node. If you drag in media, you don't need to have a node on here. It still generates all the preview images locally, and then you send it off. If you write a node here, it adds like a wrapper element. So all of these images you added are bundled inside of that one. And there's multiple things like importing from your phone the images and watching folders on your Mac or Windows PC, for example, that automatically import into Heaper. But the best part is, because you have the server as well and host that yourself on your own NAS, you can also just put the files on your FTP server or your Samba share and have Heaper imported from there. That way the server can do all the heavy lifting and indexing of files, getting metadata, and even creating thumbnails for videos and photos that you can then easily pull on demand. And your phone still has all the benefits of, like, it is a really nice integrated system I'm currently working with. And that's currently how a sync looks, and that does happen in the background every few times, but everything you have open and is connected live will sync automatically. Another cool thing is the privacy stuff. Like, I've added global filters, so it's not in the sense of privacy from like corporations, because that's like kind of the default here. I don't even know how many people use Heaper. I'm really appreciative for everyone who makes an actual online account, because that at least gives me some form to measure how many people use Heaper right now. The privacy thing is more about just hiding everything that has these tags applied. And you can have tag groups in here and they're not shown for obviously privacy reasons. So you are very easy to filter out everything you do not want to leak on stream or show to other coworkers, for example, which I think should be something that is really default, because who of us has all of their things open when they want to share like a picture? And with this approach, you can really hard lock out all the things that should not be touched. And with the tag nesting, you don't need to have like every single thing mentioned in there. You just need to apply the parent groups for it, which makes this a lot easier. I'll also make a full install guide on how to set up the server and the app, but stay tuned. Happy organizing!